right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another Trap House podcast. This is episode 11, and today's guest is Mark Steck of Dakotaline Snares. Mark's a great guy. We've had a chance to sit with him at the FTA National in Virginia. Share a lot of good stories and good laughs and great information, too. So stick around for that. But before we jump in there, we got to give it up for the sponsors. They keep the show going, so I really appreciate the support from our sponsors. We have J3 Outdoors, maker of the Hags bracket. It's j3o.com. Jeff makes some really quality products here. Of course, he's got the Hags bracket that a lot of people are familiar with. If not, you should probably definitely check that out. He also has a spring clip, an extra large spring clip for the larger size body grip traps. He has a Hags bait holder, the tail hook, that's for muskrat skinners. And then the multi-lock, which I haven't tried yet, but I'm going to give it a shot this year, the Hags multi-lock. It looks pretty sweet. It's so universal. It's not just for water setups. It's for land setups as well. Say if you catch a coyote and you want to get it out of plain view of the road or whatnot, you can put a slide wire down, and that coyote will essentially slide down the line and get out of plain of view, hide him in the brush or whatever you got to do. So it's not strictly just for beaver and otter, but it's pretty cool. It's lightweight. I've held them in my hand at the conventions. Pretty lightweight product, and it works on rebar, fiberglass rods, different gauge wires, different size chains. So it's pretty universal and lightweight, like I said. So you might want to give that a shot. Pretty cool product. Then also I want to mention our newest sponsor, the Top Lot Stretchers Company. They have a website, toplotstretcherco.com. And can't say enough about the quality of their wooden stretchers. Of course, in all sizes they have available. They have adjustable stretchers as well. Charlie and I have used these on some of our nicer our nicer furs that we've caught, and you can really do a nice job putting fur up using their stretchers. They have a website, like I said. Jump on there. They got great descriptions on their sizes and what's available. They also sell trapping supplies as well, and tools and things like that, DVDs. So you might want to check their website out, toplotstretcherco.com. Then, of course, we have HoosierTrapperSupply.com. I want to mention that Charlie's working on the new catalog. It should be available here in about 3 weeks or so. One way to request that is going online at HoosierTrapperSupply.com and hitting request the catalog on there. It's pretty simple, straightforward. Or you can call us here at the shop, and we'll gladly send you one once they become available. The phone number is 317-881-3075. And like I said, that's how you get your new catalog, or call us for any questions for that matter. But Charlie has a pretty slick website himself. And, of course, this podcast can be heard from the homepage of the website. So it's a great place to get all your trapping goodies and tune in. And while we're on the topic of Hoosier Trapper, gotta say, Hoosier Trapper Outdoors just started. Our first episode for Season 8 kicked off on Friday. Hopefully you tuned into that. If not, do us a favor, jump on YouTube and check that out, see what's going on. It's a lot of fun putting that show together. So that's going to be, that show releases every other week. So keep your eye out for episode 2 coming up. And last thing I want to mention before we get to chatting with Mark Steck is I started a Facebook group called the Catch Circle. It's for anyone and everyone that wants to be a trapper or is a trapper. All levels of expert to beginner, doesn't matter. If it's trapping related, it's welcome on there. My only rule is just be nice, be courteous, don't be a jerk, and that's about it, really. There's more than one way to catch a coyote, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, and people are sharing it on there. So jump on the Catch Circle on Facebook, and we'll see you on there. All right, I think that's it, and thanks for tuning in. Like I said, let's let's hop into it. Thanks. All right, we're here with another podcast. Hanging out at the Fur Taker National Convention here in Virginia. It's winding down, and we are set up in the same building as our buddy Mark Steck. So we ran out to the parking lot real quick for a quick little chit-chat. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And of course, Charlie's here.
And we have Bob the dog, Mark Steck's sidekick.
Bob goes everywhere with me.
And if you ever, for those of you that follow Mark on Facebook or whatever, you'll know that Bob is pretty prominent in Facebook posts and even stories.
He has friends all over the country and Canada, and he's been to the Arctic Circle with me. Yeah, he travels good. Dogs are just good for people.
Yeah. And it looks like he's pretty bored with us right at the moment because I think he's wanting to go to sleep.
Yeah, he doesn't find much of anything interesting.
So you can't have some level of intellectual conversation with Bob?
Not really. He doesn't chase balls. He doesn't. He's not interested in girl dogs. Pretty much food.
Has he been neutered or is he just okay?
Yeah, he's
okay.
been neutered. Sorry, Bob. Probably shouldn't. Probably doesn't like me telling people that. But yeah,
it's getting a little personal for the dog.
So it's always great when we all get together at these conventions. You see people you haven't seen in a while, and every time I see Mark, I just think of the time we went out there running a snare line with him. And unfortunately, the weather wasn't ideal, but it was still a really fun time. Hopefully we can do it again at some point if Mark will have us.
The weather was rough. It was very rough.
We got there on the tail end of a blizzard, and we left before another one hit. So
I never did get my snares out until spring.
Yeah.
Some were under snowdrifts that were bigger than I've ever seen. And in the spring, they must have moved right before that second blizzard because there was a lot of them. And that was such a rough winter that a lot of the coyotes that were under the snow, of course, they're dead in the snares I use, but other animals would eat into them and live inside those coyotes. That's how bad it got that winter. Yeah, little rodents were living in the cavities. Yeah. Never seen anything like that before.
I mean, that's kind of the old possum joke where you see the dead cow kick the cow and the possums come running out of the carcass. You know?
That's a joke?
So with Mark...
I don't remember that.
I've never heard that one either.
So sometimes...
Before my time, I
So
guess.
sometimes with Mark, you need to qualify things because he's got this... You've got a dry sense of humor.
Yeah,
and,
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I got to say, I was watching something that you had done for Robbie Gilbert a couple years ago, and you're doing demoing a set that he had plugged into his show, and you were talking about that you didn't really need to wear gloves, but you wore gloves because you had to protect your hands because you were a ladies' man, and they appreciated you keeping nice, soft hands.
Yes, I truly am.
Yeah. And I can see that.
Yep, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a curse, really. It's a curse.
I probably won't even comment on that.
Okay. All right.
Going back to when we were in South Dakota with you, under the circumstance, and I know you were saying that year that there weren't the number of coyotes that year that you had seen the previous year.
Yeah, it can fluctuate somewhat dramatically, and sometimes it's funny because it's almost like it's synced up with Montana and North Dakota, and in fact, I'm sure it is somehow synced. Yeah, there's some years where you hit a pocket where there's not many, but usually it's broad-based. That's why I keep my trap line, I run a 3-day check out there, and my lines are sometimes up to 80 miles apart, and so you can average things out in terms of if you hit a pocket, maybe the airplanes hit it real bad in the spring and summer. I mean, another area you have will be better, but some years that they're just down, period.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone was really ever offered an explanation for that other than speculation.
Nobody has, nothing that I've really grasped and believed in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like anything. It's like a coyote. You really don't know how they think necessarily. We can only speculate. Until they can talk, we don't know. Trail cams have given us a huge advantage these days on how they work sets and so forth, but there's a lot we don't understand.
Right. They it's still an animal though, and it still has the limitations of the animal.
Yeah, for me it comes down to more, and sometimes I kind of compare coyotes to fishing. I mean, sometimes the coyotes just are not interested in footholds or your lures. And
right.
That's where snares kind of offer you. Snares will really tell you what you've got because they never fail. They may walk around a snare and hit the next one, but population's pretty good after a few checks with snares. Where footholds, sometimes they walk right on by your sets.
Right. And I'm glad you said that because and I'm sure you've had that call a number of times over the years, like, what am I doing wrong? The coyotes are walking right by my sets, and I just say, my standard line is you just stick it out. The next time they come by, they may very well get caught. It's just that coyote, and hit what he's thinking or not smelling or not in the mood for or whatever. So,
yeah, they can make you scratch your head. And the thing is that, I'm a veteran. Charlie, you're a veteran. And I make it a point to let people know that at times I'll struggle because if you go on the internet, everybody's an expert and they never struggle and they never miss one. And that's just not how it is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that is the fault of how this thing's presented. With us, we get compliments on what we do because we showed the days that aren't necessarily so great or the mistakes that we have made or things that we didn't predict would happen or just that up and down. And there are days that are clearly better than others, as you mentioned, and particularly when we're running sets, which we're primarily foot traps and attractant, not so much snares. So yeah, you could just got those days, and it's just the way things are. It's not that your guys are doing something incorrectly or wrong, But
yeah, and it's the same way with for instance, a dug-up trap. And I've had some very respectable catches with both footholds and snares. And I've watched videos, and I make videos for other trappers. And when I do, I make sure they cover diggers because everybody I've ever been with for any amount of time is going to have traps dug out of the bed.
Right.
There's no way that they don't. And Phil Brown did a demo this morning, and he's a very good fox trapper, but has caught a tremendous amount of coyotes. He had a video on a trail cam video on a website one time, and the fox dug the trap out, and then the time lapsed, and so the next segment, the trap was out of the bed, and the fox must have been playing with it and got caught because the next video showed a trapped fox. And Phil said he's caught 24,000 fox in his life.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, and I know he's caught a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, and he gets dig outs.
Yeah.
And so everybody needs to know.
Yeah.
That there maybe probably isn't anything they're doing wrong, and it could be a fox, it could be a skunk digging on you, but it happens. It's going to happen to you if you're going to trap much at all. It's going to happen.
Right. And in our area, coons are a problem with that. I mean, they're feeling around. Their front feet are like hands, and they got your
grab that chain and rip it out of there.
Yeah, they're just feeling around to find something, and and a lot of people want to give them way more credit than they deserve. Mm-hmm. We got a really smart fox, we got a really smart coyote, or this coon's just incredibly intelligent, and he knows exactly what that trap is. Well, he has no idea what that trap is. It's we're still talking about an animal, when they've got maybe a random, unpredictable nature to them to a point, but they're still limited by being that animal.
Yep.
So, and of course we're limited by how we look at things and sometimes we are our own worst enemy and overthinking it and beating ourselves up and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. And take Bob here, for instance. And I watch my dogs and their habits, and I'd rate Bob above average in intelligence, but we play checkers almost every night, and it's rare that he beats me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's yeah.
And I'm not that good.
Yeah.
But another point, though, is I had a student with me, and he had taken lessons from Craig O'Gorman. And if anybody's listening, Craig he's legendary. I think everybody would agree with that. And he traps year round, full time, and so they were going out, and Craig had grabbed a bunch of about a dozen coyote traps, and he had some prairie dogs that were getting pretty ripe in the truck, and he threw these traps on top of the prairie dogs. And the student that was with me asked Craig, well, isn't that going to smell the traps up? And Craig paused, and he had to think about it a little bit, and he said, well, we'll just throw some urine over the set. I mean, and that's when you talk about oversimplifying things or thinking too much, that's what I believe.
Yeah. The and some people that give instructions are very, very specific about things, which I think leads us down a path of then that's the way it's got to be, and if it's not that way, then that's why I'm probably not successful.
Exactly.
And the old question of how far back the trap is from the dirt hole, is one of those that will never be answered in some people's minds. That and we are on the side of we just hug the hole, and if there's a root there, then it doesn't hug the hole, and so in Andy Weiser's like 12 inches back and to the left or whatever. So there's probably no correct answer. It's just what's working for you and whatever. So
I feel that the trap goes in where it goes, and I make them step there.
Yeah.
I encourage them to step there.
Yeah.
So I've never been a believer in a certain distance. I mean, I believe you guard the hole pretty close, and you make them step there.
Yeah.
You get back a ways, and you have more area to defend.
Exactly. It bothers me way more to have a track between the trap and the hole, or you're attracting if it's than to have one that maybe didn't fully commit to the digging at the hole or whatever. So, anyways, that bothers me quite a bit. So, Mark, you and I are the same age, and so you were trapping when you were a teenager and prior.
Yeah, 14.
Okay.
I got addicted to it. It was a very good thing for me.
Yeah.
Very good thing. And because you're at a place in your life where you could make mistakes and you're curious about everything. And so, trapping got me addicted. And there was a family close to me that were muskrat trappers. And then there happened to be a mink trapper on my paper route, an old guy, 50 years older than me, almost to the day. And he was a veteran mink trapper, cement man by trade, and blind setter, and we got to know each other and became friends. And so it was a real pivotal and also a real blessing in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And he always had, nobody would show you much back then.
Right.
He didn't think along those lines, and his saying was, I remember that I skipped school to go with him. And my grades were at rock bottom anyway, so it didn't matter. And he said, I'll never forget. I was telling them, well, nobody will show me anything, and they all pretend to have secrets. And he said, well, if you can't help somebody, what the hell good are you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So that was your introduction, was mink trapping or muskrat trapping or water trapping? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That was the big deal. And fox trapping, there weren't a lot of good fox trappers because mink had been king for many years, and fox had not.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just starting to become valuable in the 70s.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember really when that started to really kick in, and then fox trapping was the thing. Probably 74, 75, maybe right in there. I was still in high school, and of course that was just at the beginning of the fur boom that none of us fully realized how incredible that was, particularly at this point now, looking back on that, So.
$40 fox, and if you plugged in inflation, that was in like '74, maybe when I was a junior in college, and I probably graduated a few years after you, even though we're the same age.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But if you plug that into inflation, it would be almost $160 today.
Yeah, and they went up from there. They went up from the $40.
Absolutely.
So I remember we had a fur sale. It was a fur taker fur sale, and we sold foxes, and that would have been in 1975, and my foxes I think brought $35 or $36 average, which is, and like you said, that's incredible money.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly for some young kid just running around catching critters. And by the February sale, which would have been in 1976. Of course, that was my senior year, so your senior year. So that, I assume.
You can assume, yeah.
So, but they had already gone up to, they were pushing like the $50 average,
Yes.
Yep. It was just an incredible time. We had some ups and downs, and but overall it was good for a number of years.
There was a huge number of fox too.
Yes, yeah. It was prior to this mass eastern. Well, of course, you were still in South Dakota, but this massive migration of coyotes, particularly in Indiana. We didn't have coyotes at that time, And somebody would say, "Well, I saw a coyote." Well, maybe you did, probably you didn't, But we didn't have coyotes.
No,
so there were lots of foxes to catch. So.
No, and I grew up in Minnesota, but I moved to South Dakota because of high densities of fox.
Okay.
I couldn't resist it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you just continued. Did you then focus mostly on fox trapping and land trapping then at that time? Were you still water trapping or?
Yeah, I moved to North Dakota, and then they changed their section road trapping, and it was because I would just trap section roads and these old primitive roads that were public, and just keep rolling through areas, and they closed the road trapping down in North Dakota, and I moved to South Dakota, better laws, and that's where I've been ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And we've protected those rights real. The association has put up about once a decade we have a threat to public right-of-way trapping, and it's a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not many states you can trap public right-of-ways anymore.
I think Iowa maybe.
Iowa you can. Minnesota you can.
Oh, can you in Minnesota? Of course, as a non-resident, none of us can go to Minnesota, but
right.
That's probably it. I can't think of any others.
Yeah, I don't know offhand of any others.
I mean, if you get in a national forest, once you're on that public land, then you can work off of the Forest Service roads. But
right.
In terms of in general, private land bordered roads, I don't know of any other than those three.
I can't think of any either, and it's an attractive thing because critters, in particular fox and coyotes, and they travel those roads. Those are the best spots to set in a lot of cases.
Right, exactly. Now, I would imagine nature of humans and seeing that side, there was some pretty ugly stuff that went on in the 70s and 80s because of high fur prices.
Yes, there was.
And I can imagine that road trapping was probably had its downside in that respect.
Yeah, and certain areas of the state, and still to this day, you will be run out by locals, even though nobody's trapping them. If you try and trap roads, West River in particular, it can boil down to threats to your life. Now, East River, everybody accepts it.
Yeah.
And so I don't trap roads West River anymore, and I've got lots of land. The ranchers think I'm a guy in a white hat because they don't like coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
But, I had some ugly times West River, and you would leave an area. You might pull in the dark, and everything was legal. You're doing everything legal.
Right.
But it would get pretty hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Money is a pretty crazy thing.
It is.
And then Probably partly just that Western mentality too, as well. I would think, because they're already out there in the middle of nowhere. This is my land and whatever.
That's exactly it. And there's some. I don't have anything as ugly as some guys I know. Ray Milligan, he trapped out of the town of Lemon. Well, I rented a house there one fall, but he had a camper, and some guys came in and put a shotgun to his head. And another buddy of mine, he's older than me. He's about 15 years older than me, and he won't tell me the story, but I know the story. And they got him cornered, and they put a gun in his mouth.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy stuff.
Yeah, and the only thing he'll tell me is I never got my traps out. I just left.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is, it's when people talk about seeing another fur boom and all of that, I always say that you may want to rethink that.
I agree.
That's you're in business too. Obviously, you own Dakotaline. 2013 was a pretty good year business-wise. I mean, sold a lot of product.
Yes.
But had that kept up, we would have seen a lot more issues.
Yep.
And there were issues that year. I know the conservation officers in Indiana were saying that they had more calls on trapping complaints than they had in any other year for a number of years. And during those 70s and 80s, I know if you talk to a conservation kind of whatever officer off the record, he was like, I wish coons were extinct. I mean, he was just they were just so fed up with all the problems and issues and stuff, because coons just had a high dollar price tag on everything. Did, but coons were, a coon dog didn't know where the boundaries were, and the trappers and dog hunter relations, and I mean, it was just on and on and on. It was just trespassing, and farmers were fed up with it. They didn't want to give people permission because they were just over it. So
well, and that's why I mentioned North Dakota. They closed down their roads. It was because of trapping.
Yeah,
and you can still hunt on the roads, but you cannot trap.
Yeah, and it was probably, in some respect, for that time, probably not a bad idea.
I would agree.
Yeah, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy, because I know none of these times you guys are talking about. I'm just taking it all in.
Yeah, I've mentioned too, the trappers that we have now, they're here to stay. I mean, if they're just trapping because it's part of their lifestyle, it's part of their passion, it's part of what they enjoy doing. So things are not bad right now, and we still sell a lot of product.
Yeah, and people are looking at it not as a livelihood. They're looking at it as they get hooked on deer hunting,
right,
archery hunting, or they don't. They're still that mentality. We all can recognize this in ourselves. Oh, next year I want to do better.
Yeah.
There's still that.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not about a paycheck.
Right. I mean, it's part of it. But it's not the reason.
It's not the driving force.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Mark, you trapped in South Dakota, the rest of your life, right? I mean, to this point, that's been your primary focus state.
It is, and I get into North Dakota yet because I have a trapping camp it's got a beat up camper, and the weather gets rough up where we go, but I go up into North Dakota too, and it's just I love trapping new area every year and exploring it, and so I have just, you guys have seen it, but some areas where it's just fun to be in.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, that
and it's easy on the eyes. It's beautiful out there.
Yeah. And you can run across a lion. They aren't common, but they're there, and they have a good bobcat, and the coyotes are pretty decent too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun when you really don't know. I'm always looking at tracks, even though I've been doing this forever, and it's a healthy thing to find interest in day-to-day things.
Yeah, and there's always something to learn. Even at this point, like as you said, both of us have trapped a long time, but there's always something to learn. There's always something to discover, or a new twist on things.
Charlie, have you ever taken somebody with you that they maybe haven't maybe they've never trapped before, and they make an observation that you never have.
I can't think of one specifically, but yes, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So yeah. And
new eyes, fresh eyes, never really.
Yeah, and sometimes when there's no baseline, they are going to see or say something that is totally off the wall.
And of course, I have such an ego that I won't acknowledge it to them. You know,
Well, in fact, you probably don't ever invite him again.
no.
That guy was arrogant.
I pretend it's my idea. You know, but,
So when did you just start developing your line of snares then?
well, it would have been in the early 2000s,
Okay.
and I spent 25 years with a regular job, so my trapping would be on vacation time, and I was raising kids, and so I didn't have a regular job until I was 28.
Mm-hmm.
And it all revolved around trapping. I worked for government. I worked on wildfires and things like that, and but it all revolved around trapping. But as I got into my career with the game fish and parks of South Dakota, I always said I'd like to own a business, and I don't know. I just don't know. And then it hit me. Well, I like to trap, you know.
Yeah.
I just assumed that the market was pretty crowded, but there was one big snare company, the Snare Shop, and I thought, well, rather than competing with 6 or 7 or 8 big companies, I'll compete with them and get some market share, and it just kind of grew from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so then how long did it take you as far as developing your specific snares and I know that's ongoing. You're working on that new product currently, but I mean, just to get to the point where you felt like you had it down to offer it then.
Well, it took a while for us to figure out how to consistently dye snares.
Okay.
And I think that's what broke us out in terms of just another snare company.
Right.
And we developed a dip and so it I didn't buy a building. Everything was in my garage, and many business owners know how that is. And I didn't buy a building, and I didn't leave the game fish and parks until 2011. But I was building the business. I was developing products. I learned how to import. I learned how to have products made in the States. And I was building a base and so that I would leave the state. And I love the hunt of new products. I'm not necessarily good at redundancy. I don't build many snares. We have a number of employees at Dakotaline, but I love the hunt. I love the freshness of new things, and that's kind of a downside sometimes too. So we've grown it. It's been fun. There's at times it's not fun, but the people I work with are like a family to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And some of them have been with you for a long time.
Yeah, up to 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I take pride in that, and I like going into work. I like the people I work with. Sometimes they sometimes wonder what I actually do, but I love harassing them, and I just like going to work, and I think in most cases they do too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to say I knew your sense of humor when one of your raccoon. I don't know, it was the pipe trapping one or one of them when you had those young teenage kids with you and you guys would stop and you'd be filming a segment, and one of them was always be eating a sandwich and the other one's smoking a pipe.
Yeah, the one of them there is, and I keep in touch with all these kids, but one of them is Clay, and he's got 2 kids now. He works in HVAC, and I watched a lot of these guys grow up, and we stay in touch, and very rewarding. And some of them probably needed some therapy after
being with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But I enjoy the heck out of that age. I really do, and they're so enthusiastic, and they see it through fresh eyes. And Yeah, their minds are so open at that age, and yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah. Well, it still sticks in my mind. A number of years later, I got a kick out of that. So, I think you mentioned at one point that the kid's mother would not be happy about him smoking a pipe or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't think it was even lit. I think he was just sitting there with a pipe in his mouth.
He was just cutting up.
Yeah.
You get on some guys you get on a camera, and that was him. He likes that. He had some bravado in him. He'd never had missed a pheasant before. Well, I took him pheasant hunting, and I was just praying he'd miss one, and he did.
Well, you're talking about the people you work, and they're kind of wondering what you do, and then you have this great advantage of being able to be gone most of the winter out trapping and snaring and whatever. So that's a tribute to your employees for sure.
That's how I've always wanted it, and it is tricky to find that where you can let go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure at times I don't let go enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had to train myself because I've never wanted to be tied down to a job at this age in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will let people fail.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not something really big, I'll let them fail
Mm-hmm.
and pick up the pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's something to be said for that. So
yeah, I think it's key. And I do find myself, it depends on your anxiety level, and I think sometimes it's better for me to be away.
Mm-hmm.
It's better for them.
Yeah. The ideal of failing in business, and the people that are so afraid to fail, or so afraid to change or alter things, or as you go. Of course, that doesn't really add up to any level of success generally. You've got to be able to try things, and not everything's going to work. And
that's exactly right. I've had some successes and some just train wrecks.
Yeah. And it's you just got to chalk it up to that's a learning curve, and
it is harder though. Like when you're raising kids and you're trying to make ends meet, it's harder to take risks.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got more on you at that time, so for sure. But
my question is, do you value me, Charlie, like Mark values his employees?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Charlie's always saying good things about you, Justin. And aren't you, Charlie?
I am.
Just the other day he was saying something good.
Yeah, I even texted it to him.
I don't remember what it was, but
I'm just gonna act like you were being honest.
Well, Justin, you and I spend more time together than I do with any member of my family, so
it is impressive to me.
Yeah,
because you guys actually like each other.
Yeah.
And he's the father-in-law and the son-in-law, and you guys actually get along really good.
Yeah,
we make it work.
Yeah, very fortunate. So,
and he always says pretty much good things about you too.
Yeah,
Charlie. And I can't think of any, but he does. He talks highly of you.
What's that country song?
Which one?
Take this job and shove it. Some days I want to say that, but no, I'm just kidding.
Well, every now and then. We had hired a kid. It was one of Justin's friends, so I'm going to blame it on Justin. But we hired him by his recommendation. And I like this kid. He's a good kid. Well, he's not a kid now, but he was a young guy, and so they're bottling some lure. And his very first day, and I aged lure in gallon glass jars. So they're out there bottling it outside, and he picks up a piece of rebar to stir it before he pours it off to mix it. Well, you can imagine stirring something with a piece of rebar with a washer on the end. He just hits the side of the jar and
not me. He did.
Yeah, the guy that Justin recommended.
No, yeah.
I recommend.
I'm following. Yeah.
So
he busted the jar.
Yeah, exactly. And of course it wasn't at the top; it was at the bottom. So the entire
I'll take the responsibility. I mean, that's how I do it, and it always worked, and I never broke or cracked anything.
Yeah.
You got to know how to finesse it.
Yeah. So
and he didn't have that soft touch.
So I went and bought some long-handled plastic cooking spoons that they could stir stuff up if it needed it, or run it back through the blender or whatever, or a grinder. Whatever.
You solved the problem.
Yeah. Now, did you hear the story about Justin and the coyote urine?
Oh my gosh!
No, I don't believe so. Why do we
bring all this up? That was in a past episode anyway.
Well, we can rehash it.
Okay. No, I do want to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll run it by you real quick. So we go up north. Charlie sends me up to pick up. I don't know how many gallons. They're 5-gallon buckets.
The whole bed of the
bed of the truck is
completely
full,
filled with 5-gallon buckets of coyote urine,
to where it will barely latch, if at all.
The tailgate.
I'm kind of visualizing.
Yeah, you already know where this is going. And it was Mike Huber sitting there talking to him, and we get it all loaded. Well, you start to chit-chat, and you kind of just shut the gate and not think about, I didn't push on the gate to make sure it clicked, you know what I mean? And he's got a fairly long road till you make it out to where the highway is, and it doesn't whine, but it does go up and down, and nothing fell out. The gate didn't pop or nothing like that. So I wasn't, not even thinking about it. But I come to the stop sign, and the traffic's kind of flowing pretty good. So it's kind of those things where you wait for your window to gun it to go and get out there, get out of the way, Well, I hit the gas and turn it, and half the truck is flying. Urine all over the road. Coyote piss everywhere. I mean, these cars pulled over, and this guy wants to help. And I'm like, I don't think you want to help, man. He's like, no, I don't worry, we can fix this. I'm like, no, you can't. He is drenched in this stuff, and his wife is still in the car, I believe. I'm assuming it's his wife. And he just had to he had no glove. We had nothing. And it was just a nightmare. I could barely call Charlie and tell him what happened. And to tell you how good I'll tell you this, how I think Charlie's such a good guy. I felt so bad to call him because we just lost, I don't even know how many hundreds of dollars worth of urine all over the place.
On top of the
and Charlie's like,
factor.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. He goes, well, don't worry about it. Things like that happen. You guys go back and see if he has any more. And that was it. Like, I thought, oh my gosh.
It's like, what are we going to do about it?
No sense is crying over spilt coyote urine. Get back to work.
But it was a pretty expensive little deal. But on the other hand, here we are several years later, still talking about it, and
it's provided great content for this podcast,
rehashing that mishap, and we've gotten a lot of mileage out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me. I had one of the Dakotaline employees came out to my trapping camp, and he's just totally addicted to trapping, and it was in early November, so I had the season in front of me, and I have a topper on my vehicle. Well, the tailgate, the latch is a little funky, and I couldn't get the tailgate open, so I was going to regroup and get a different position because I knew what I had to do, and he jumped in. I didn't have time to say any words, and he ripped the latch off of the tailgate. And I was kind of upset because I knew that meant the rest of the season I'm screwed in terms of opening that tailgate, and the topper's on it. And but later we would discuss it, and he said he thought I was going to start chasing him.
So had he seen that side of you before?
Well, and he could read me, I guess, because I tried my best not to get mad, and I just was pretty quiet.
Yeah.
It was a build-up. You probably started turning a different color.
I knew that it wasn't going to fix anything, and I was upset, but I couldn't see any good. I actually said a little prayer that I hold my composure, because you can do a lot of damage.
Right.
Yeah. And but we did laugh a lot about it at a
Since
later
then,
time.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much realized that there's a lot of things like that. There is absolutely nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Get back to work.
the damage has been done. And I can't undo it. So
No, and I assume he went and got more urine, and it did not happen the second time.
that's true.
Then you might have got mad.
Right. If it happened twice.
You just got your truck too. That was another thing.
Yeah.
And the thing inside the cab, all over the bed. He's like, "You're washing the truck out." And I drug the hose out and had to wash the bed out. It was an ordeal.
That didn't last long because it was a truck for trapping, and
Well, I was just getting it prepped.
Yeah.
You do have to
Smell like
wonder
skunk.
people driving that road if they could smell.
Oh my gosh!
I'm sure.
We should have went back there and set some traps on the side of the road. 'Cause
Yeah. The funny thing is, Mike, I don't know if you know Mike Huber or not.
No.
Very serious trapper. And he'll go catch, right off the bat in Indiana, go out and catch 100 coyotes, get them in cages, collects urine, and then he hits them all, he shoots them all or hits them in the head or whatever, shoots in mid-December, and then pelts them out, and then prepares to go to Kansas and trap for 6, 8, 10 weeks, depending on how things are working out there. Catch a couple hundred coyotes out there, and normally for 300, 400, 500 coon. He used to catch 1,000 coon in Indiana when running the roads, and so and this he's older than we are, but he's still after it big time.
That's impressive.
He got one of those got that tremendous drive, and works really hard at it. So anyways, Mike that happened, and of course Justin goes back to see if we can get some more, and
he knew standing out there. He saw my face, and
it didn't take long. Of course, he was telling the story. He was telling the story too. So I got people coming up to me that he talked to, and you heard Justin lost a bunch of urine out of the back of the truck.
I was like, "Quit telling everybody that, man."
Yeah, once that cat's out of the bag, you aren't getting it back in.
Yeah. In fact, this is the second time it's come up on the podcast. Yeah. Anyways.
Look at Bob. He's comfortable in here.
Oh, yeah. He's wiped out.
Bob is transferred to the back seat with me, and he's laying it out there.
Hope the people listening to the podcast find this more entertaining than Bob is finding it.
Yeah, I hope so, too.
Yeah, because if he's any indication, we are really failing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's pretty excited right now, actually. I mean,
for those of you that can't see this, he's completely wiped out in the back seat, asleep. So.
All right, everybody, got a quick product highlight I want to talk about real quick. A lot of us trappers like to deer hunt a little bit too, and deer season is right around the corner. But Charlie makes a heck of a lure called Lip Licker Deer Lure. It's our #1 seller. I use it. I've killed a nice 10-pointer on it. The beauty of this lure is it works on bucks and does in and out of the rut, so it's taking all the guesswork out for you and giving yourself a great chance at taking a trophy or filling the freezer with this stuff. I strongly believe that. I use it pretty much all I use anymore in the field. So, and another cool thing about this, most deer lures and scents out there, they don't have a shelf life, so they're only good for that season or month. Then they get kind of a bad sewer smell to them or something like that. But this stuff is just as good the next season, so you got a shelf life with it. So you can buy them quantity and bulk and not really necessarily worry about using it all or if it going bad. Say you can't get out a couple weekends that you were planning to. So great shelf life on that stuff. And you can get that at HoosierTrapperSupply.com. All kinds of sizes available. And like I said, I don't think you can go wrong. It's the best scent out there in my book. But let's get back to the conversation with Mark and Charlie. See ya. So what's on the agenda this trapping season? You just going to be staying local? Are you traveling anywhere?
No, I go out to my trapping camp.
Okay.
And last year, the first few weeks, I had Ed Schneider and Richard Johnson. I actually ran 2 days with them. I don't normally have partners, but I wanted to see what I can do. I'd had some health issues, and I kind of enjoyed it. Well, I shouldn't say kind of. I did enjoy it. So I'm not going to trap with them this year, but I like having them around. I've said, hey, look, trap this ground. I got so much land out there, and so I'll probably spend a little time with them. I'm going to run 2 lines and make myself take it easy, and not try and prove anything. We have a tremendous skunk out there. I love trapping skunks, and I like trapping good coyotes. And I want to be doing it, but I'm definitely not doing it 3 days. I'm doing 2 out of 3 days, and I don't want a lot to skin, and I just want to keep things in perspective. And I'm glad to be alive, really, and I just I have the desire, but the body keeps telling me that you shouldn't do it. And I don't know if that's normal at my age, because I know guys that are older than me that really push hard. But when I was with Ed and Richard last year, there was a couple days I just said I can't go, and I'm glad you guys are here.
Yeah. I mean, you had a pretty serious health issue a couple years ago, or a couple. Right?
Yeah, I had my heart, the aorta sprung a leak, which is very few people survive that, and I did. And so, I'm just, I look at it as bonus, and, I've been blessed tremendously, and so my wife worries. I'm out there by myself a lot, and I'm going to get one of those satellite phones now.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, at least, and I've always said, I know I'm going to go when I go, but I do not want eagles and coyotes picking at me, and I really don't. Yeah. I mean, they're eagles and coyotes. They're I don't know. I've seen the bad side of those critters.
Yeah,
and if something else, a fox comes and picks at me, that's okay. But
and those magpies or whatever they are, is it magpies?
Yeah, that's magpies. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, they're a pretty bird, and eagles are nasty, though.
Yeah.
They're really nasty.
There was some merit to Benjamin Franklin's suggestion of a wild turkey for the national bird over an eagle, because, of course, turkeys peck on nasty stuff, too, I guess, so never mind.
Never mind. I like where that was going.
Piece of history there. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in favor of the wild turkey.
I didn't know that. Did you know that?
I know.
And they went with the eagle, and I thought of that. It ran through my mind. We had an eagle. There's a lot of eagles in Indiana too. Maybe not as many in South Dakota, but we have quite a few. And there was an eagle just less than a mile down the road from our shop, eating a roadkill raccoon. And I thought, how majestic is that?
How majestic. Hey, being involved in taxidermy, I've come to find out that what I believe in, all birds, they're nasty. All of them.
Well, that's why they call poultry fowl.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
well, I think it's spelled different.
Yeah, but
don't get me wrong. Oh, eat it.
Yeah.
I realized the U was replaced by a W, but
yeah, okay.
And I think that was probably a marketing thing so people wouldn't feel bad about eating poultry.
Yeah, that could be.
And shooting ducks and whatever. So
yeah, I'm really learning a lot here today.
Yeah, I'm a wealth of information.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So going back to I think so. Let's see that. So did last year was the year that you went with Ed Schneider and
I spent 3 weeks foothold trapping with them, and they're both excellent foothold trappers, both of them. Richard doesn't have a name that's out there. He's a very successful grain farmer. He farms with his brothers, and when November 1st rolls around, he's gone. He's gone trapping, and they're both Richard's pretty close to my age, and Ed's 5-6 years younger, and so it was quite a bit of fun. They're workhorses. They're really workhorses, and they had a camper up there too, and so yeah, we enjoyed it. And then And then about Thanksgiving time, they headed down to Kansas, and I started snaring. And,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. So Justin, you were saying that your wife is concerned about you, and Justin and I can attest that it's very remote where you're at.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't really tell anybody where I'm going, but when it gets bitter cold, then I have somebody at Dakotaline that knows kind of where I'm at, and I'll check out at the end of the day. I mean, there was one time, this is 4 or 5 years ago, where the high was 5 below, and it was windy, and I had to check them to stay legal, and I got stuck, and it was towards the end of the day, and my cell phone, I wasn't a cell phone guy, and I didn't know that roaming made the battery go dead, and I just had a little bit of battery. I had to walk up onto a hill. They never would find me, and there was an old abandoned farm place, and it was there was those moon dogs around the sun, you know. It was that cold, and the closest house was 4 miles, and so I was able to get cell phone coverage, and there was this abandoned farm place. Who knows the history of it? It's one of those that's probably, it had electricity at one time, but it's old, and I got a hold of the ranch wife, and I said, I'm at an abandoned farm place. I'm all sweaty from trying to get unstuck, and she said, well, which abandoned farm place? Because she said there's so many of them, and they have
huge ranch,
75,000 acres, and then the phone went dead, and but I knew that they were going to come and get me. I didn't. They were going to piece it together. Where they could find my truck and where I unloaded my buggy, and so I just sat in there, and there was an old wringer washer in there, and I sat up against that, and you know, I wasn't ever worried. I just knew things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
And they found me, and we got down into this draw, and we got me unstuck. They were probably thinking, "What's he doing down in here?" You know. But, so
how long were you there before they showed up?
Well, the sun was about down. It was probably 3 in the afternoon when I got to a place I could get cell phone coverage, and then we cut some barbed wire off a fence because they could only get to within about 100 feet of me, and that's what we used to get me moving.
Okay.
And I was so close. It was just like suckering me in because I was so close to getting it out, and then it would slide sideways. And then I'd get close again. And I got so sweaty, and it was so cold, I thought this isn't good, and the sun's going to go down. And you know, never once did I doubt things weren't going to be okay.
Right.
But I kept thinking, be smart, you know, be smart about it.
Yeah.
And,
Don't panic or lose your head or the whole thing. I mean, there's so many things going through your mind, I'm assuming.
Yep. So that possibility is out there, and I think we all know guys that have died on the trap line there in Freeborough 3-4 years ago.
In fact, that happened right before we went up to your place to be run trap snares with you.
Okay,
because
right.
we were actually talking about it. So
yep, and you know, so it's I'd rather die that way than sitting on a toilet, you know.
Yeah,
it's got more class to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're it's beautiful country, and there's some of these abandoned places have some really cool stories behind. Well, and not necessarily cool dark stories.
Yeah,
because they had tremendously hard winters out there, and the one that. This is an incredible low area. You would never know it's there unless you were a trapper. And the lady that owns it, she told me the story. It's down in a valley, and how the guy went nuts one winter. I don't know if he lived
cabin
there,
fever style.
Yeah, and he would go
too
up
much
on
time by himself and the whole thing.
I think he had a wife and maybe a family, but the story is that he would walk up on the hill behind the house and howl.
Really?
And then one time he went up there and he blew his brains out.
Yeah.
And it's the way this house sits in there. It's so beautiful. But you think of the
eerie
pain he was in.
Yeah.
In that beautiful spot.
Yeah.
And Yeah, and there's other stories up there like that. And there's one, the rancher told me, this one kind of haunts me. It was another winter story, and the couple, they didn't have kids, but one of them gave the other one syphilis. And so you can already imagine the tension.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't get treated, and maybe there wasn't treatment back then. I don't know, but they went crazy.
Yeah.
Because syphilis will do that.
Okay.
And it infects your brain somehow, and that one haunts me.
Yeah.
That's just a dark story.
That is. And when we were up there with you, there was a number that I think we came across 3 or 4 of those abandoned places. They were awesome photo opportunities because it's just in that lonely place, they have a really awesome looking side to them, but that there had to be quite a bit of hardship behind that lifestyle or that living up there.
Yep.
And I remember one we went into, and you said, it was like they had just left. There were still the books on the shelf and the photos on the wall and clothes on the floor.
There's a couple of things in the freezer.
I mean, you could tell that it had been empty for a number of years, but they had just walked away from it.
Yep.
Whatever the story was behind that, it's kind of fun to speculate or whatever. But yeah, that incredible dark mystique about all of that is it's crazy to think about, and you got to almost be there firsthand to see the remoteness of this. And there's no particular road to these places other than maybe some 2-track.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to go back and look at my pictures now because it was just cool.
Yeah.
It was just, and you were the one you were saying that the rancher had mentioned that he'd come there and a mountain lion had come walking out the door of that one.
Jumped out. Well, I think it jumped out the window of one of the sheds nearby.
Okay.
There, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that wasn't too many years ago.
Yeah. That we can certainly attest to that lonely, dark-sided lifestyle of those people that had to live out there on that.
Well, and it wasn't that long ago that there wasn't any white settlers there. It was the Sioux. I don't remember the tribe, but Sitting Bull, Sakakawea, she died up there. Their village was under the flooded river, and Sitting Bull is buried up around there, and it really.
We stopped and checked out the little monument there.
The Sitting Bull one?
Yeah.
We did. Yeah, we walked back to it. Yeah.
Yep. And he died about 1890.
Mm-hmm.
And so Charlie, when we were young, there's probably still some oral history of somebody really young with a good mind.
Sure.
That would have possibly maybe been able to tell you about him.
Probably. Very likely.
Yeah.
It sticks in my mind, too, Mark. If you go to the Sod House National Monument on the eastern side of the Black Hills, I don't know if you've been there.
No, I have not.
That it's pretty cool. It's this sod house that I guess in a way you think a Little House on the Prairie, but it's a true sod house. And the first time I visited that place, I was 7 years old on a family trip. And, of course, that was back before the interstate system, per se, that we have today. And which is hard to believe that I can say that. And it was all highways. And we went to visit that. And I didn't realize until we had went back years later, stopped in there, that sod house was actually occupied until, and I don't remember the specific date, but it was in the 1950s was the last time it was occupied, and then shortly after that it became this national monument. It's outside the Badlands. And, I'm thinking, well, I was born in 57, so this, we were on the edge of that. Well, we all are on that edge, but I mean, we, like you said, it wouldn't have been very difficult to run into people that had been in the Civil War or would have remembered Sitting Bull or when we were younger. And certainly our parents could have or
Absolutely.
did,
On that trip, did you happen to go to Mount Rushmore?
We did.
was Ben Black Elk there, the Indian that would get his picture taken with people.
He might have been.
Ben,
I'd have to go back and look at our photo album from that trip, but he might have been.
he was a true link to the past because, and I had my picture. I was probably 4 with Ben Black Elk, but he was Black Elk's son. Black Elk was in the Battle of the Little Bighorn.
Really? Okay.
Yep, and Ben spoke fluent Lakota. He was still part of very much the culture, and he lived down on Pine Ridge. So during the tourism season, he'd move up there. But when the book Ben Black Elk speaks, Ben didn't speak any English. He wouldn't talk about. He was a medicine man, and he wouldn't talk about the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And then in the 1930s, he decided he would, and Ben interpreted for it. And so that's my link to the past.
That's pretty cool.
Picture with Ben Black Elk.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I was telling you about my grandparents the other day and this self-sustaining lifestyle, and my grandma died before him, and he died in 1982. So it was it's so interesting to see how fast history changes and our but how close just in our relatively short lives that we're connected to that. Now they say, well, you're only like, I think it's even been lowered, you're like 5.5 people away from knowing everyone in the world or having some connection to. And if you think about it, there's so much truth to that. And of course, that's a little different subject, but it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Well, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
With technology.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's crazy how all this, just talking about the past and how that just all comes back to what we like doing as far as trapping goes and how we're connected on that aspect.
Right. I
And
mean,
it's all
as far as the
ingrained.
trapping history, obviously this country was opened up by it, and we have tremendous history with trapping. Some controversial, some trapped to the point where animals were not doing so well. But despite all that, and then also by the work of the efforts of man, we've brought all that stuff back, and now it's completely sustainable. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and in some cases, there's probably because of row crop farming. For instance, deer. I mean, there's more deer since the 70s and on than ever before, more than likely. And some of the critters, a coon, raccoon.
There's way more raccoons. Yeah.
Yep.
Jane Goodall, I saw her do a clip, and they were talking about grizzly bears and how well grizzly bears are doing despite man. Well, to me that's a backward statement, because I think they were in pretty rough shape, but because of man, they were maybe in rough shape, but because of man, they've also been brought back in numbers to a sustainable hunting level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think her statement, which that's her perspective, but her statement should have been flipped, really. So her statement was that they're surviving despite man, but the flip is they have been brought back and they are had healthy population levels because of man at this point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
saw her on something that was fairly recently. So anyways,
She's the woman that studies gorillas. Is that her?
Yeah, primates and she's been around forever. She's definitely got that. I think I don't know if originally she intended to turn more to the animal rights slant, but certainly has gone to that, far to that side.
Yeah.
But, anyways, very well known. I don't know specifically what you entitle her. I know she's got. It escapes me at this moment, but
yeah.
Anyways, so. But.
Well, you know what? I should probably get back to my booth.
We're supposed to be working.
We are, and I wander around a lot at these things, and normally my wife Sandy comes with me.
Yeah.
And she's going to fly out and meet me in Pennsylvania. I enjoy these things more than ever since she started coming with me.
Yeah.
Because she likes it, and we're both. You wouldn't think I'm introverted. I've kind of evolved over my lifetime, but we're both a little introverted, and you won't see me going to functions after the show today because I need to recoup.
Mm-hmm.
But I do enjoy meeting people, and Bob's kind of an icebreaker for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean,
sure.
people know him all over the place, and the kids like him, and so yeah, I enjoy the heck out of these. I'm like any trapper. I look for deals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're accepting friends on Facebook, but for those of you that follow Mark on Facebook, he's a short story writer. Always enjoy those short stories that you write.
Yeah, I do. In 2 weeks, I'll have a book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Is that?
I just do it to amuse myself and people I've been friends with, and I sit there and laugh while I write these things. And so,
I can see that.
yeah, the name of the book is called "Hey, Crap in His Chimney."
I think you actually wrote a short story on that.
Did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
And
the big, is
I'm
that
not
the
a
biggest
chimney.
hit?
I'm not a chimney crapper. I just want to clarify that. It never would crap in somebody's chimney. Just so you're aware, because Justin's younger, and I don't want to influence him in any negative ways.
Right.
But, yeah.
So is that your big hit as far as short stories so far? You get the most feedback on? Is that why you use that title?
Well, I thought it was an unusual title. That's
It would get your attention.
and I do have a short story regarding that, because when I was young, we used to see how many
chimneys.
roofs we could get on in the neighborhood. It was totally harmless, but people at night, you'd sleep out in the backyard. Did you ever do that?
Yeah. Well,
You
yeah.
didn't sleep, but
Yeah.
so we would target. Okay, if we crawl up in that tree, we can get on this dude's house, and then that was over. You did that one, and you left, and no harm done. So that's how that evolved. Yeah.
I read the story. I remember. I remember.
I can't wait to get
The
this
one
book.
with, and I don't remember what the word was. You called it the magical plant, or
Yeah.
That's a very funny story.
Yeah.
And then you had some stories that are a little more emotionally touching with Bob's perspective of your health issue.
Yeah.
So so yeah, you touched us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know I could write, and
Yeah.
and it's just kind of a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
I do have a weird mind, and so
And it translates well to the paper.
yeah, apparently I can put it on paper. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I really appreciate you joining us, Mark. I'm sure we could probably get together in the future sometime.
We'll do this again at some point.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it was
Okay,
fun.
my pleasure.
And thanks for joining in, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.